Great. Can I get it? Cool. Excellent. Thank you. All right, welcome everyone. This is the Pirongia Ward Committee meeting for April, and I just want to welcome everyone here today. We're hoping that we're going to get a few more people join us, but we thought we'd just get into it because we've got a very full agenda. So with that, our first item is apologies. So do we have any apologies? Kieran, I think you've already mentioned we have Hopai Puki, is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Is anyone else aware of any other apologies? All right, so could we have a mover and a seconder, please, that the apologies be accepted?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Jeff. And a seconder?
I'll second.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you, that's great. And now, are there any disclosures of members' interests? This might be relevant for any of the funding applications that we are considering later on in our meeting. But anything else? Gosh, that's amazing. All right, excellent. Thank you. No disclosures. And any late items?
No, there are no late items.
So you did mention, Kieran, last week about the transportation report. Was that going to be treated as a late item, or?
Yeah, unfortunately, that hasn't been completed. So I would suggest that we just send that out as an information report after the meeting.
Okay, cool, excellent. No, that's good to clarify that. Okay, so then we have the confirmation of order of the meeting. So I'm presuming, Kieran, that there's been no changes to the order or anything that we're
no changes as yet.
Excellent. All right. So could we have a mover, please, and a seconder that we confirm the order of the meeting? Oh, thank you, Jan, and a seconder, Jeff. Thank you. I'm just relying on seeing those hands. So if you're not happy with that, be good to unmute yourself so I can hear you. Yeah. Excellent. So we have the two. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Against,
carried. Thank you. And so now we're moving to the confirmation of the minutes of our previous meeting that was held on the 8th of December. So that's on page 8 of our agenda. So I'm going to go through page by page. So we've got page 8 and page 9. Oh, I noticed, Kieran, that under item 6, there were a couple of like there's Hams Road with a double M. I think it's just meant to be Ham Road, and Detour. It's on line 2. That's all.
Yep, I'll get those fixed.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And then page 10 and 11 and 12. Everyone happy with those? Cool. Could we have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Janet, and a seconder. Thank you, Alan. I'm just going to check that you were both there because, yeah, excellent. Thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Great. That's wonderful. So now we're going on to the verbal reports from the various representatives on our committee. So if you don't mind, I'd just like to take you in order that I see your face in the gallery. Okay, so the first one up is Jan from Nahanapuri, and then Alan, and then Ruth. We'll start with you three, if that's all right. So Jan, would you like to unmute yourself, and have you got anything that you'd like to share with us about what's happening in Nahanapuri?
Nothing new, just still the boy races and things like that, but I know that that is slowly becoming under control maybe. And of course the bridge on State Highway 39, along with the Ham Road, Nahanapuri Road bypass. So obviously there's still a lot of traffic going down those roads, and the residents down there are obviously, still very unhappy about it. Yeah, that's all from us.
Okay, just with those buoy races, are you been able to identify the particular routes or roads that they are favouring?
The corner of State Highway 39 and is it Warehams Road or is it Pirongia Road? And there is very prominent. Yeah, and then I mean realistically it's just them doing their big loops now, I think, and I'm trying to keep away from the authorities.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And I have Brian Hudson here as part of the staff lineup. Brian, have you got any updates on the Ham Road and Hanapuri Road detour? It's on track, I think, isn't it, for the timeframes ahead?
Yes, from what I hear, they're on track with their bridge contractor. Although there's always a risk to program, we're hearing all over the countryside that contractors are having great difficulty getting materials that they want, steel and reinforcing steel and things like that. So there's always a risk to program, but I haven't heard any adverse news. And I know that Fulton Hogan were actioning that speed limit reduction on Hams and the Hanapuri Road, but I haven't been for a drive in the last week to see if that has been completed yet.
Thanks, it's really good to get that update. Great, thank you. All right, Jen, are you happy with all that? And then I'll...
Yeah, that's fine. I think Fulton Hogan were out there either yesterday or the day before. So that's just a process, isn't it?
Oh yeah, well it's good to know that they've been out on site actually. Yeah, that's great.
Just a late note, Bruce sends his apologies.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, Alan, how's things in Te Pahu?
Still got the we've got the buoy races now, or person races, just to be careful. Yeah, only on Limeworks Loop Road, Te Pahu Road, both ends. But they have their moments, I suppose. There's a few broken signs lying on the ground after it. Although I'm been assured that they actually don't do any damage. No, there's just been the odd query about a few roads that when their resealed program is, but I can catch that up in that report, is that they're probably in the system somewhere. It's just some people asking a bit more about it. I think it was Godfrey Road, I think they were looking at. But I've heard no news.
Okay, no, that's great. Yes, Brian's department have definitely got a list and everything's prioritised. Brian, are you happy to speak to that?
Yeah, I can quite quickly. Yes, I've spoken to a couple of residents in Godfrey Road. It's a gravel road and they would dearly like to see it become a sealed road. So let them know that under the current long-term plan, the first 3 years council has not funded seal extension work. So there's a lull in that type of activity. The priorities are there's Rahuri Road and Grey Road to Miro, which are roads sort of ahead of Godfrey Road, or along with a few others. So that I explained to the residents of Godfrey Road that there is a priority list. It's based on, traffic volumes and dust effects and things like that. And so gave them all that criteria. Obviously, they would much prefer that money was being spent every year on seal extension and Godfrey Road was at the top, which is the same as every resident on a gravel road. But I think people are realistic about the program and what it costs and what it takes for council to seal that last sort of 35 kilometres of unsealed road in the district.
Great, thank you. And then Alan, I just wanted to mention about the buoy races, about the bylaw change, and they really need to have the names of the roads that are being used by the buoy races so they can be put into that bylaw change.
Okay.
So, you can, I'm sure if you got in touch with Kieran about it, she'd be able to help you. I don't know if the cut-off time is looming or not. Yeah, but
pretty much any intersection on Te Pahu Road, main road, that they can get away with. You can name them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks very much for that. All right. Ruth now for Pirongia.
Yep. Afternoon, everybody. Yeah, we've been just ticking along in Pirongia. We have reinstated our community newsletter. So the second edition has just been delivered by our wonderful residents, and the Scouts as well helped out. So it has been received really, really well. So it's been an opportunity to get some more information out there and to get other community, sort of the groups connecting together more, which is sort of the role that I've been taking on as the community connector, and sort of looking at how we can actually integrate the community a bit more as well, which has been a bit of a slow process, but with COVID and whatnot, but it's definitely coming up. We're quite excited for the AGM. So we have had Susan Trodden, one of our very dedicated committee members, has moved away from the area. So yes, she's moved to Hamilton, so a bit gutted about that. my right-hand person. Yes, so we're desperately looking for a couple of other active people who are doers to join our committee. Yeah, so we're looking at, we've got a couple of residents who are keen to do like a subcommittee for CCTV cameras. So it looks as if we're going to have to fundraise ourselves for those cameras if we want them in the near future. Again, we're having some similar issues with donutting and on the intersections and various different roads within the village and rurally as well. Yeah, Sainsbury Road is one, O'Shea Road, and sort of Ross, corner of Ross and Crozier are one of some of the main intersections. Yeah, and the other thing we've been sort of promoting more around about the use of the community halls. We are finding, well, I think it's probably committee have been dealing with an ever-growing frustration with council without sort of knowing what we can actually do with the buildings, waiting on maintenance reports. They were due to be done in November last year, but that still hasn't happened due to the contractor not wanting to do a scoping for an extended period of time, which we can understand that because he's trying to cost for something that's going to happen in 10 years' time. But we want to see that building used, and we've got groups that are interested, but in its current state, we can't really let people use it. For example, we've got a psychiatrist who wants to do community counselling. We've got the Citizens Advice Bureau who are looking about doing one morning a fortnight. But again, the building won't actually, well, the community building on Crozier Street won't really, it's not fit for purpose yet. So, yeah, so we obviously don't want to spend money on a building that council haven't made a decision on what's actually going to happen to it. Yeah.
Ruth, we've got John Miles, who's the property property projects manager. I just wondered if he might be able to comment. John, I do appreciate that you have got staff vacancies as well, but if you could just give us an idea of how you're going with that work.
Well, just before you started speaking, Ruth, I was emailing Dustin to find out where the maintenance report is in relation to those two buildings. So, yeah, I haven't heard back from him. I only sent it about 2 seconds ago when I was just flicking through my quarterly report. So something that Bruce and Dustin have been involved in. Bruce has obviously left in the last month or so. So I'll chase, well, I am chasing him. If I get a response before I leave, I'll let you know. Otherwise, I'll certainly let Ruth know, Ruth, and also Claire as to where we're at with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. That would be great. Yeah. All right. Ruth, anything else?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. All right. And now the next ones will be Jeff and then Janet. So, Jeff, how's things going at Kaipaki?
Right, Kaipaki is normally quite quiet. We've had field days being bashed around and told to go somewhere else until the end of the year, but And the hall had a flurry of activity on it. Suddenly things were happening, getting sealed in, the doors and windows were all put in. And then they had to put the jib up, and there isn't any. So now sitting there like a big white elephant because there's no jib to close in the inside properly. Not much you can do about that because everybody's got that problem. And apparently there won't be any new jib being sent out until July or even after that. So we just have to live with it. On a positive note, John Parker, who seems to know an awful lot of people who can help, managed to get a team in, and they have completely repainted the inside of the hall, done up the toilets. The toilets always had a hole in the wall, always had coat hangers missing. Several people had tried to fix it over the years and never quite managed to finish, but now it looks so clean and tidy. I'm sure people will, some guys are going to be going in there to go to the toilet and think they're in the ladies' toilet. It's just so tidy. Yeah, no, it's sort of been spruced up and we're quite happy with the end result. Apart from that, it's all quiet on the Eastern Front.
Okay, thanks very much, Jeff. And Janet, how's things at Koramatua?
Well, so far no boy races, so that's really good. We might be next on the ranks once they've actually left these other locations, apart from Collins Road and Regans Road, of course, but I don't class that as Koramatua, but it's just down the road. But they've had boy races for many, many years. So COVID's really hit the hall for the usage. And of course, we adopted what the Waipaha Council, what Bruce Nuns had actually done. He sent me a copy of getting people to actually sign, for hiring the hall, saying that they were going to sanitise before and after and keep a record, etc. A lot of people refused to sign it. And I said, well, you can't have the hall. So, but of course, we've come into Orange today. So that actually, we're coming into Orange, is excellent news. But we've got some people that actually wanted to know, who want to hire the hall regularly, what is the maximum number? Well, that's a real problem, finding out the maximum number. So, and of course, I found out that Bruce Nuns had left, but of course, in December, he'd actually done a report on halls, and we were told that we could only have 50 people. And I thought, well, I can't hire the hall out to 50 people when they want to have a 21st or a wedding or whatever. So I actually spoke to somebody, I spoke to Carol Wood and then the building consent team, and spoke to a gentleman there who was most helpful. And he'd actually gone through the file, and apparently this file's available, whether it comes through as a PDF or comes through as hard copy, I'm yet to find out. But he actually went back to 1992 and back to 91. He and then in 8 different years. But apparently in 1985, there was a number of 135 people for the hall. So that was good. I can say that I know there's been a lot more than 135 people in there. But there's work to be done into regards of we do have fire exits and we do have fire extinguishers. But we don't have a building warrant of fitness, and that's because nobody lives in it, or, it's not classed as a new building or an upgrade to a building to require that. But it looks like a lot of work's going to be needed into having fire plans for the people hiring it, as to where they're meant to meet. There's meant to be a sign on every door saying that you exit and you go to such and such. So I think that's something we can all learn from, and perhaps council could be a bit proactive in assisting there, I feel, because council actually own the building. I know we have a lease and we manage the building with that lease, but we're not actually told of these things that are required until we actually ask a question. And I think there could be some sort of guide for people as something that I'd suggest. But I got a big thank you for Kieran, and also obviously for Claire and for Bruce. But Kieran, I believe, was the one that solved the problem for us, which we had last year as well. And I hope that we don't have it again next year. And that is waiting for our hall levies to come in. It's the last couple of years have been a real fight to get the money that is duly owed to us, that the residents have all paid up until the 30th of June, I think it is, your financial year. And, we're waiting till March for that money each year, and we shouldn't have to wait that long. We should be able to have that money sooner than that. And it was an issue because I'd used a template on an invoice to the council. The council computer couldn't read it. Nobody notified anybody that it wasn't readable. I don't know why, because previous, apart from 2 years ago, it's been accepted. And I use a similar system for another council that I am involved in, and it's accepted there. But anyway, I've learned from that, and Aaron was very good at sourcing the issue, and obviously the hall being paid the money that it was meant to have. So I think if any of you, the rest of you, are involved in halls, I think you need to double check that you're actually getting your money that is rightfully yours to use to maintain your halls. So that's that really, yeah. But I'm not looking forward to the boy races coming along. There's a few dips and corners that they could do very well on. But yeah, apart from that, we're pleased we're going to Orange, and hopefully we will be able to get some more people hiring the hall, because our expenses are far greater than what the income is with COVID. Yeah, especially when we do need to do some work to the hall.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Just on the payment of the amount that's collected, on the rating system for you, I think Kieran did a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that we got to the bottom of the issue. And Kieran, would you say that it's a matter of any of the people who are managing these community halls, if they haven't received a payment, that really they should follow up perhaps through you or through finance or something, just to see what's happened, not just to wait and hope, but to be proactive if they think it's taken too long to get the payment to them?
Yes, certainly follow up. I'm just trying to think. It either probably best through the property team or the finance team to follow up and see what it is. I mean, this one was a technical issue and the type of file that was used, but certainly if it's struck by other halls, etc., you definitely follow up and find out.
Okay, I haven't heard of any others that have had that problem, but yeah, we want to make sure, Janet, that you get the funding that you need, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think that's the last verbal report, unless there's someone else on our Zoom meeting from one of the other communities, but I can't see you, so I'm hoping that's it. And so we have a resolution on page 13 that the Pirongia Ward Committee receives the reports from the Kaipaki, Koromatua, Ngāhinapori, oh, well, I've got a Haupo, but we didn't have one from Haupo, Pirongia and Te Pāhu representatives. So could I have a mover, please, and a seconder for those? Thank you, Janet, and the seconder, Jeff. Thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Raise your hands if you like. Against? Carried. Thank you. All right, the next thing on the agenda is the draft annual plan. And I see we have Kirsty here and also Ken as well. So just like to welcome you to our meeting, and would you like to introduce the item?
Happy to, but Kieran, I understood that Claire was presenting this, so.
Oh, well, yes, I'm going to.
Yeah, okay, you are, okay.
But if you'd just like to make some general comments, if that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I saw you there, so I thought, well, I want to make use of you. That's
okay, all. Sure. So you've received a report. Claire's going to lead you through a short presentation, and then Ken and myself are available to answer any questions. We commenced consultation on the draft annual plan in March, and that will conclude on the 20th of April. So keen to receive feedback. We've been presenting a number of these webinars to the various communities, community boards and interest groups. So yeah, keen to have Claire present, and then we can respond to any questions that you may have, and should you wish to make a submission, we would welcome that from you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kirsty. And we have a great lineup of staff here that will be able to field any particular curly questions or anything. So with that, we'll get into the presentation, which is very colourful and easy to understand. And Kieran, I'm presuming that you're just going to move the slides forward as we go, that I don't have to worry about that.
Claire, we have Karen doing that for
Karen,
you tonight.
Okay,
yep,
all right.
Thank you.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so let's get to it then. So this is what an annual plan is. It's really the annual budget sets out what council's going to do with the activities and services, but it also covers any big issues that we're facing and key projects, where we're going to I suppose the quantum of funding that we're working with, and where we're going to get the funding, and any changes from the long-term plan, which is what we sort of were working on last year. And so in summary, it's how we set the rates and other forms of revenue for the next financial year. Yeah, so that's a nice overview. So next slide. And by having the annual plan process, it's a chance for staff to review how we're going, and I suppose report back to the community. So messages that we're largely on track and delivering what was planned, but the signalling that there's some challenges facing our community, and what we might need to be doing in the future. I guess I've got some other stuff here I could have just read, so I might just do that too. COVID has affected us all, and still things like high inflation rates, changing interest rates, and a turbulent economy with supply chain issues, which we've already heard about actually from Brian, are causing cost pressures for everyone. And we also could be facing increases in the cost of materials and building supplies. And then we have the labour market and staff available during things like isolation periods with COVID. And then there's the general challenge of attracting and retaining staff in these tight labour markets. But we understand these pressures and experience them ourselves in delivering council services. But we also know that this could be impacting on our communities and their own lives. Okay, thank you for that. So now this is the average rate increase, 4.3%. So that's down just by 0.1% from what we had planned in the long-term plan. And in that long-term plan, which covered 2021 to 31, the expected rates increase for this financial year coming was 4.4%, which is also the average rate limit that we should not exceed in our planning. And so this annual plan provides for an average after growth rates increase across the district of 4.3%. So I just want to emphasise that's an average rate increase across the district, and so individual rates, individual properties might have different increases. The total average rate increase was actually 7.2%, but because of our high growth rates with the increase in number of rating units, that accounted for 2.9% of that possible increase, and so that's been able to reduce what we're seeing there at the 4.3%. Thank you. And this is a great pie chart of where the rates that we collect will be spent. So it shows the proportion allocated to each of the council's activity groups. But it's important to note that there are other funding sources which are used to contribute to the overall running costs of council and our district. These include development contributions, loans, user fees and charges, external fundraising, and central government funding contributions. Next year, we're planning to spend approximately $176 million on capital projects, and of that 176 million, 120,423,000 is to meet additional demand. 30,815,000 is to improve our levels of service. So it's the services you're already receiving, but we're just increasing the quality or extent of those services. And then 24,499,000 is to replace existing assets. So we're certainly tackling our renewals. Okay, thank you. And then the key changes from the long-term plan. There's been very little changed overall. There have been some changes to individual projects, to some being implemented in 2021-22, so that's sooner than was planned originally, and others being implemented later, so pushed back into the 2022-23 years, or even later than that. The projects that are being pushed out to the 2022-23 year mostly relate to infrastructure projects supporting the development of new residential and industrial areas. So these types of projects include physical works such as the road urbanisations, installation and upgrade of underground water and wastewater infrastructure, but also include securing the necessary land for public purposes to accommodate future infrastructure such as roading and stormwater reserve land. One major change identified in the annual plan relates to the development of the Tiomutu to Pirongia cycleway. That's the one that goes via Lake Naroto. 5.28 million has been deferred from the 2021-22 financial year into this coming year, 2022-2023, due to delays associated with securing the necessary property agreements for the off-road sections for the first part, that's Tiomutu to Lake Naroto cycleway, and accordingly the construction of that section 1 is now planned for this coming financial year, 2022-2023. Yeah, and I must say that's taken a phenomenal effort actually on behalf of our property team to do all those negotiations. We know that it's really desirable to have off-road sections for cycleways because they're much more popular and picturesque, I think, for those using them. But it certainly is a real challenge to get all of the various property owners lined up and agreeable. Thank you. And further changes would be recycling costs have increased by 170,000, and this has been caused by contamination, which is actually really disappointing. Recycling bins are not rubbish bins, and this is causing an ongoing issue for us. It means there'll be extra costs as we need to send truckloads of contaminated recycling to landfill. To address the high cost of recycling contamination and additional costs to send contaminated recyclables to landfill, the targeted recycling rate has been increased, or is signalled to be increased. I said this is a draft, so it hasn't happened yet. And then due to funding pressures, Waka Kotahi have not been able to fund their 51% share of the planned urban walking and cycleway cycling project for Cambridge and Te Awamutu in the 3-year period 2021 to 2024. Council will progress the project, continuing with planning and preparation until funding can be secured. So currently this is a reduction of 390,000 in revenue. So that's quite significant. Okay, thank you. And these are the key projects coming up. So again, I've been talking about the Te Awamutu to the Pirongia route. We haven't forgot about Te Arawai either, so we'd love to do the concept and design phase for Te Arawai this coming year. District-wide skate parks. I hope actually some of you have been involved with that, or even some of your children or relatives. Yeah, so the two new skate parks in Kihikihi and Pirongia, and then the upgrading of the ones in Cambridge and Te Awamutu. And then our growth is continuing full steam ahead. So we've got residential and industrial development happening in growth cells and structure plans that are in line with our Waipa 2050 strategy, which is sort of a longer term strategy about how we manage our growth. We have the Cambridge wastewater treatment plant. And so things that are happening there for the summer of 2022-23 are the site clearance, disposal fields, pre-works, and the foundation improvements. And then lastly, we have been working on the Waipa Community Spatial Plan, and that's going to carry forward into the 2022-2023 year. And this forms a blueprint for all the planning moving forward. Excuse me. In our case, yeah, the Waipa Community Spatial Plan is a 30-year plus roadmap. Okay, so next slide. So that's been a pretty summarised overview, but what are you going to get for your rates? So you can check out the proposed rates calculator on our website. And we often put it in the chat actually for our Zoom meetings, but I'm sure that you can find it yeah, on the Waipa District Council website. And so you just put in the address of your property and it'll give you what, I think it shows what the existing rates were for this financial year and what the proposed ones will be, so you can work out any increases and what the changes are. So next slide, and that sort of sets out that how to have your say. So yeah, we'd love to get any feedback from anyone in this meeting, anyone in your communities. The Pirongia Ward Committee themselves can do a collective submission if you like. And I think I just saw a little message in chat there to say that something's, yeah, the infographics are available here at a particular link that's been put in the chat for you all to access if you like. And so the submissions are open until the 20th of April, so you've still got some time to do that. And then any changes take effect from the 1st of July 2022. As I said, the whole idea is to set the scene for how we're going to manage the activities of council and how they're funded for the coming financial year, which starts on the 1st of July. Yeah. So with that, yeah, we're open for questions. And if there was anything in particular that you saw that I just skipped through and you'd like a bit more detail, I'm happy to go back to that slide and take advantage of any of the great staff experts that are in on this call as well, so that you can have a, yeah, a really detailed answer, yeah, to your questions. So I see Janet with her hand up. So Janet, would you like to go first, please?
Yeah, regarding the recycling and the contamination in there, I know of an elderly neighbour who it took a lot of time for him to understand that the plastics recycling, the yellow lid big bin, was not a rubbish tin, purely because it had a yellow lid and you have yellow rubbish bags. So I think, you know, for some older people, they think of yellow with the council as a rubbish bag. And I guess if you were doing more of those bins, if you change the colour, I don't know what colour you'd use, but take it away from your rubbish bags, because he's one that I know of, and he just thought it was wonderful. The council were giving him a rubbish bin, and that's what he used it for. So it must happen in other places as well. Yeah.
I see that Brian Hudson has his hand raised, because this is his staff look after this particular activity. So Brian, yeah, happy to hear what you say.
That's interesting feedback. I think that situation would be quite rare. The bins do have stickers and stuff printed into the surface of the lids saying, you know, no rubbish, it is recycling. So yep, I can imagine there could be some confused or ratepayers or residents who might make that mistake. But on the whole, what we're finding is that the contamination is one or two things. So it's things that look like they should be recyclable, and you know, if that battery pack on your electric drill stops working and you turn it upside down, it's got a recycling symbol on the bottom of it. But, you know, if you put that in your rubbish bin and it gets crushed in the truck, it'll burst into flames and, you know, cause devastation. But people, it's that sort of education thing. They see a recycling symbol, so they stick it in the bin and disregard all of the information that has been provided and the information on top of the bins that say what can and can't be put in the bins. So there's that type of mistake made. But then there is really that deliberate using the bin to dispose of stuff that people don't want to pay for a rubbish service or go to a transfer station. So the more noxious stuff is cans of paint and drums of waste oil, medical waste, you know, veterinary waste from, you know, people's home farms where they think all those plastic tubes and needles and things should be recyclable. So some of it you would scratch your head and say, you know, people can't really be this stupid, can they? But it's that I think deliberate. This is a convenient place to put it. It'll be hidden in there, and I'll get away with it, and somebody else will, you know, wear the cost. And so that's the real problematic contamination that we have. That once you can imagine a can of paint, that truck, you know, lifts up the bin, it goes into the back of the truck, and there's a big paddle that sort of squashes it into the back of the truck to make more space, and that breaks open the can or the drum or whatever, and it spreads throughout all that material, and they don't know it's in there, and they get it back to the plant and they tip it out on the floor, or it goes up the conveyor belt and into the equipment, and hello, it's spread through a lot of stuff. So yeah, major cost. And so those are really the, you know, the types of contamination that we need to crack down on, or have been cracking down on with those audits and the like, and education, but we really do need to make further inroads to stopping that.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, I'm really pleased that you were able to speak to that, because I'm incredibly disappointed myself, because I'd love to see more recycling services available to people, and yet it's because the people that have the opportunity to use the service aren't following the rules, and it's incredibly expensive to do those audits, and then to have so much contamination, you know, entire truckloads, so that yeah, it adds a lot to the costs of running the system, and in fact it becomes really uneconomic, whereas we were hoping that it would be a reasonable, I guess it's not necessarily going to be a business, but at least it was a cost-effective service, and that's not the case, is it?
Yeah, that's quite right. We shouldn't lose track of the fact that 90% of the residents in the district do use the recycling bins well, and are getting a great service out of it, because, you know, not only are those materials being recycled, but if they didn't have that recycling service, they would be having to pay to put out, an extra bin full or bag full of rubbish every week that would end up in a landfill. So, from a price perspective, it is actually really good value for money for the residents of the district, not to have to pay to dispose of rubbish. Yes, they're paying a rate for the recycling service, but it would still be cheaper than what they would have to pay if they were having to dispose of it all into a rubbish type service. So if we can get that remaining sort of 5 to 10% doing it well, then yes, it certainly is good for the district and good for our residents.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Ruth.
Just unmute myself. So with regards to the delay on the cycleway between Te Awamutu and Pirongia, what sort of things have been put in place to prepare Pirongia for that increase of activity, whether it be like parking for bikes or maybe people doing park and rides, or people riding and then families picking them up? So because we are quite limited with regards to parking, and there's already a bit of congestion around about where they can park at intersections, for example by the pub. Visibility is greatly reduced there when you're coming out of Pirongia Street heading north. So what sort of things are put in place to prepare the village for this influx of visitors?
I'm just wondering which staff member would be the best to speak to that. Brian, would that be you?
Well, I can certainly talk about parking. So I guess Pirongia is pretty fortunate. It has got some wide streets like Crozier Street, which if parking becomes an issue, we can mark parking spaces and use well the close streets to that Main Street area for people to park and then go on their bike rides. Certainly there's a lot of capacity to do that. But probably what would be even better would be for those users to park. I know myself, whenever I go to Pirongia for some walks or other activities, and we park in the pub car park and go and do our activity, and then go and have a drink and a meal at the pub afterwards, and there is lots and lots of parking capacity there frequently. So I would say, generally Pirongia does have lots of parking, as long as we make sure it's used well and people can identify the places where they should and shouldn't park. So I don't think that would be an issue, but I don't know if whether Brad or others have got some ideas as well, because there will be people going to Pirongia for other recreation activities, and he might have some ideas too.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
I was going to say, I probably wouldn't rely completely on the area behind the pub, because that, as far as we know, is planned to be developed fairly soon. So yeah, there'll be a nice space lost.
Yeah, Brad, would you like to have something to add to what Brian said?
I was just going to say, I think I probably agree with Brian's comments on the parking, that there is on-street parking around the neighbourhood in Pirongia, in those neighbouring streets. But in terms of the infrastructure of like bike racks and things, I'm not 100% sure of what is programmed as part of the project, but I can find that detail out as to if that's been established or not, and come back to you guys.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Brad. Good questions. Thank you, Ruth. Any other questions from the members? Oh, Ruth, you've got another question. Oh, you're still on mute, Ruth.
With regards to the skate park, do we have any timeframes or any sort of indication of locations or how much money possibly that the community need to raise?
So this is for the Pirongia one?
Yes, for Pirongia, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've obviously made good progress with Te Awamutu and Cambridge designs. Obviously, we knew those sites already, so it was quite swift or quite easily to move on those designs. And you might have seen Te Awamutu construction has commenced now as well, which is good because it's ahead of schedule of the Year 2 program, which is good. With Pirongia and Kiki, with both sites, we have done a desktop exercise as staff to work out potential sites and locations for these parks. And we've taken that to Ngāi Topua Waipa, and their advice was to share those with the respective marae committees. So our next step for Pirongia specifically is to go and meet with Purikiriki Marae and just share our or staff's preferred sites, I guess, or all of the sites that we think would work best. And then once we've got that feedback from mana whenua, then we'll share those with the community to see which 2 or 3 sites would be, most receptive from the community's point of view. So a couple of steps to go before we can confirm the location, and then obviously the design will fall out of that as well.
Brad, have you got any dates for that meeting with Purikiriki Marae yet, or is it so?
No, we don't. We were aiming for this month, but I understand the meeting for this month was on Easter Sunday, so I'm not even sure if that's going ahead or not. But regardless, we've got multiple staff away over this period of time,
right,
maximising the long weekends.
Yeah, okay, so it still might be a couple of months. Yeah, okay. No, thanks, that's really helpful. Ruth, I hope you're happy with that answer.
Yep, no, that's fine.
Cool, thank you. And I'm pleased you asked, actually, because I wanted to know as well. All right, so we don't seem to have any other questions from the members, so I think we can wrap that up there now. So Kirsty, would you just like a final word or anything?
Just to thank you for those questions. It's been great actually to receive feedback at the different forums that we have held. Obviously, it's not as good as being able to connect in person. So we've done our very best to try and come up with a workaround that still enables us to connect with our communities and in a more interactive and less formal way. So just really encourage you, if you've got any burning issues that you think we need to hear back on, to make a submission or to contact us through the website. We'd happily receive your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. And you've made it really easy to make submissions, haven't you? Although this group's pretty experienced, I think, at making submissions, either written ones or via the website, even email, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I just want to say a big thank you first to the communications team for putting together that presentation, because you've made it really easy to grasp, what the plan is and, the key points and that. And also having all these staff members here to answer any questions, just to get an instant response is really appreciated. Thanks. So I just wanted to know from the members, do you feel that we need as a committee to do a submission? Like, I'm sort of feeling from the questions that there wasn't anything that is of grave concern to the to the ward committee, and that I'm just going to leave it to individuals if they wanted to do anything themselves. Is that a fair comment on what the sentiment is? I'm seeing some nods, so yeah, cool, thank you. No, that's great. All right, so with that, I think we've just got a resolution to receive the information. There it is on page 14, that the Pirongia Ward Committee received the draft annual plan presentation. All right, so could I please have a mover and a seconder for that? Thank you, Ruth, and a seconder. Thank you, Jan. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. All right, so now we'll just go to our next item. That's the district plan work program, and so that's the purview of Tony Quickfall, I think. Yeah. So we've got a report there of all of the programs. So this is to do with the new developments, the subdivisions that are happening, the resource consents, the national policy changes and things like that. So I'm just wondering, Tony, if you just want to do a quick overview, or we're happy to take the report as read and just take questions. Tony, what are you feeling there?
Kia ora, thanks, Claire. I'm happy to be guided by you. If everyone's familiar with the report and has read it, I'm happy to take it as read, but equally if anyone wants me to take them through a high level quick run through, I can do that too.
Yeah, thanks. Like we've had these reports previously, so I think the members are pretty familiar with the format. Of course, a number of you are in communities where there is a lot of growth happening. I'm thinking of Jan, you know, Ngāhangapori's certainly got lots happening in Pirongia as well. So if you've got any specific questions, yeah, that'll be fine. But apart from that, we'll just take the report as read. And so any questions just on the district growth? With that? Cool. Excellent. Can I just ask you, Tony, I did have some inquiries from people living in Te Pahu about that quarry activity. Have you had any more queries since those initial ones about, you know, what's happening there?
We haven't had any more queries, so Wayne is preparing a letter that will go back out to those, I think there were 3 who made the initial queries, and he'll give them an update of where things are at. Hoping to get that out this week, but things have just been a bit frantic in terms of trying to respond. So if it's not out this week, Wayne is off next week. It'll be the week after, but we will respond.
Okay, good. Thanks. I haven't heard anything more from those people. Yeah, excellent. Cool. So with that, we'll just receive the report. So could I please have a mover and a seconder to receive that report, please? Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Alan. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. That's good. And then we will go on to the quarterly reports. So these cover property services and the community services. So we'll just do the property services one first, which is being looked after by John Miles. We've already had a bit of a discussion about the halls. I'm happy to take the report as read, John. Are there any particular matters within the report that anyone has got any would like to raise with John? Sorry, I had property services down first, but when I go into the agenda, it's the community services one first. Sorry, so we'll just and that's Brad Ward that looks after that one. So we'll just do the community services quarterly report. Now, are there any particular issues there that anyone wanted to raise with Brad? We have already talked about the skate park progress. There's also been a lot of vandalism in our, you know, toilets and reserves, unfortunately. And yeah, and then there's information about the public, the museums and the libraries and things like that. And halls. Yeah.
If I could through you, Chair, I think you've sort of summarised it quite nicely there. Probably the other thing I would add is in our parks team and plan reserves team, or probably community services across the board, actually, we are seeing quite a few gaps in our team in terms of recruitment, and some roles are really struggling to recruit. So some of our projects have been delayed. We had Sainsbury Road, which is one that we would have loved to have been a fair way down the track on now, but that's just been parked since end of October, really, with vacancies, and sort of Naruto Reserve Management Planners in that same boat. So yeah, unfortunately, there are some delays, and our operational team are also having to bring in contractors in some locations to help support that as well. I think we've got about 12 vacancies just in our parks and reserves team.
Yeah, and that's the reality of this tight labour market that was sort of alluded to in the annual plan presentation, wasn't it? And that's can be really challenging. Yep. Yeah, if you don't have the people there, yeah, you can't get those projects progressed, unfortunately. Yeah, because we all love to see that work done, because all of us, yeah, well, yeah, having like the Sainsbury Road Reserve, for instance, I know that there have been people very interested in how that was going to go, and those reserve management plans are very important to ensure that, you know, those projects have progressed there too. Yeah. So any questions of Brad about anything to do with open spaces and our parks and reserves? Okay, that's great. Well, that was easy, wasn't it, Brad? Oh, no. Here we go, Jeff.
Query to Brad, and it's probably a silly query. Has anybody ever built a toilet you can't break?
Well, I'd love to find it if there is one.
It's a universal problem everywhere. You go into a toilet and sure enough, there's something broken, or the tap doesn't work, or the hairdryer doesn't work, or something's always wrong. And it's somebody, a very strong gorilla of some sort, has managed to rip it off the wall.
Yeah, you did right. And yeah, I haven't found a bulletproof one yet. You know, we've had the artwork at Kaniwhaniwha Reserve damaged in this particular quarter. Plus, we had one of the dryers in the Pirongia toilets just ripped off the wall and stolen. You know, that's $1,000 alone just to buy the kit, let alone the install again. So yeah, all these things, while they might be reasonably small cost in nature, they add up with the amount of it that's going on. Certainly.
Yeah.
Do we have cameras in these locations to try and identify who's actually doing the offending?
It's a little bit of a tricky situation to have cameras around toilets, around the whole Privacy Act and things like that. It becomes a bit tricky. Even some of our counters, people mistake them for cameras and they get ripped off the wall real quick. So we do have some covert cameras, but yeah, we've got to be very sensitive about where we put them.
I think that you're also looking at the placement of cameras in those around those rural reserves that have had a lot of vandalism, you know, like the grass being all ripped up, you know, with my
Yeah.
but it's not necessarily the reserve itself, is it? It's the road that leads to it and stuff like that. So
yeah, so on some of our reserves, yeah, those we've got 4 that of particular hotspots: Bulmer's Landing, Pukemako Reserve up above Cambridge, Te Amuru Cemetery, and Gaslight Theatre in Cambridge as well. Those particular 4 hotspots we are looking to put some cameras in, and we just, yeah, again would have liked to have got them in, but due to COVID and people not being able to get down and assess the site and then get the materials in, we are delayed on that project as well.
Okay, any other questions? Oh yes, Ruth.
Can I ask, we're really desperate for signage with regards to the esplanade. So it's not really obvious for people travelling through Pirongia that there's a beautiful look that they could do while they stop and have their break. And also the signage for the playground. I would call it a new playground, but it's not really. It's been in now 3 years. And people don't know it's there. So are we any further on in getting, I know that we're doing dual signage, like dual languages, but surely for a playground, it doesn't need to have any written words on it. We could just use a symbol, because we're losing out on that. People are passing through because they don't know, well, there's no playgrounds, we're not going to stop here with small children. So.
You're right, Ruth. We are working through that signage work with Mana Whenua at the moment around the dual naming and some of that, and the most of the signs do have an element of text on them as well, even though it can be quite minimal. So yeah, we've got our first tranche almost signed off with Mana Whenua now, one of which includes Matakitaki. So that will be one of the first cabs off the rank. And it's definitely like on the cards. Usually most of it is of what we've programmed so far is renewal, so we haven't actually programmed new signs as such, but when we come to the Rangamare Reserve, that will definitely be sort of included as part of that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I think that was the last question for the Parks and Reserves Open Spaces report. So thank you for that, Brad. And then we've got the Property Services report. And again, I was going to take it as read. We've already asked some questions that relate to Pirongia. John, those were the update on the progress with the halls and the assessments there. Because a lot of the stuff that you've got there is more in other parts of the district. Yeah. But is there anything in that report that the members are particularly interested in?
I was just going to touch on a couple of things, Ruth. Claire, if I could.
Yes, absolutely, John.
Given that the report's October to December and we're now in April, things have moved on a little bit on a couple of things that affect Pirongia. One of them's a house at Franklin Street's been removed. In relation to the TA to Pirongia cycleway, progress on the first sections progressed pretty well in the last couple of months, that we've almost got a contiguous route between Tiamutu and Lake Naroto. And we are now working with landowners affected in stage 2, so from Sing Road through to Pirongia. So that's progressing now. And yeah, I'm hopeful to have the first section, most of the agreements in place, but there are some conditions on some of those agreements that we just need to fulfill to get that contiguous route. The other issue is the forest harvesting up Sainsbury Road. We decided on Monday to put that off, given that someone started a war in the Ukraine. Petrol prices, diesel prices have gone through the roof. Timber prices have dropped somewhat. There's a whole bunch of logistical issues getting ships and moving logs. So, and we were getting closer and closer to winter. If we had started, we probably would have had rain from now to September. If we don't start, we probably won't have any rain. So some of these things you can't win. So that is put on hold. Hopefully there's been some comms go out around that. So we will look at to recommence that in summer. So that's all I had.
Not an easy thing to be trying to manage, John.
No.
Infinite.
No, there's too many balls in the air with that one.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks a lot. So, any other questions for John to do with the property report? Cool. Excellent. Okay. So we'll just receive those 2 reports. So where is that? So that's on page 32 of our agenda. The recommendation is that the Pirongia Ward Committee receive the quarterly property services report and the community services quarterly report as well. So I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for that. Thank you, Janet, and a seconder, Ruth. Thank you. All in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And so I'd just like to thank Brad and John. Yeah, it's been great to have you here and to field any of those questions. Yeah, really appreciate you being here. All right. So yeah, thank you. And so now we'll go on to the Treasury report. So that's on page 65 of the agenda. And I think I'm going to be guided by Karen here as well, because she's always making sure that this all is looking good.
I try my hardest to balance the books. It doesn't always work. I would like to comment on the 2020 discretionary fund that has not been spent by the Geoscience Association. So I have just quite literally just received an email before saying, yes, we have received that money. Thank you very much. Don't try and, so I'll have to make sure that gets taken off the Treasury report for next time. Yeah. So according to them, they have had that money and taken it and used it for the publishing of a book about Mount Pirongia.
Yeah, cool, excellent. Well, that's good. And so I'm looking at page 67, which gives a summary. So it shows what our starting amounts were and what expenditure has been committed, and then what the balance remains. Yeah, so that all looks, yeah, reasonably good. Any questions from the committee? Okay, great. That's good. And then we had some stuff that was returned as well because it wasn't required in the end. That's cool. And so we just have to receive that report, don't we, Kieran? There's nothing else that we need to do there?
Yep, that's correct. Just receive the report.
Okay. All right. So, and it also records on page 65 that we have uncommitted funds of $8,888 as well, which is pretty important for us moving into the next part of our meeting. Yeah. So the recommendation on page 65 is that the report of the financial accountant for the period ended 31st of March 2022 be received. So I'd like to have a mover and a seconder, please, for that. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Janet. All in favour, please say aye or raise your hands. Against, carried. Cool, thank you. All right, and then we have a separate item for the Pirongia School discretionary grant. And I just want to thank you, Kieran, for handling that and making sure we had all this information. So you will recall that we allocated Pirongia School $1,500 for the operating costs of the school pool, generally over the summer. But because of COVID, the school didn't open the pool to the community. And Kieran's touched base with the school again, and we've had an update from them. And you've had that email to read, which is on page 71. So in fact, the email does say that even though they didn't open it to the public, they still incurred those expenses totaling about $3,500. Kieran, is there anything else you'd like to add, since you're more familiar with this than I am?
No, I'd just like to say that the committee has to decide whether they are quite happy for the Pirongia School to keep the $1,500 or whether they want to take part of it back, because the original application was for not just for the school kids' use, but for use by the community, or whether you want to return have the whole $1,500 returned.
Yeah, so you've given us three options, which is on page 69. One is just to leave the allocation as it stands, so leave it with Pirongia School. The second is to partially fund the allocation and ask for the remaining funds back, or ask for all of the money back. So it'd be good to get some discussion from the members. And I see that Janet, you've unmuted yourself, so perhaps you're wanting to say something.
Yes, I'd like to let them keep the money. And, you know, it was money that we allocated to them for this purpose. Maybe when we come to their next application, we may look at it a little bit harder. But I think at this point, let them keep the money. And they do a good service. The children learn how to swim. And it's just a pity that we had COVID and they couldn't open it up to the public.
Thank you.
It's not their fault. No.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jeff, I was going to ask you. Yeah, so you're happy about that too? All right.
I'd be quite happy for them to keep the whole lot. They've got a pool to run, and they've obviously had expenses, and we want that pool running next year. So
yeah. Okay, and other nods around too. So with that, we've got the recommendation. Oh, well, actually, so do we have to pass that recommendation as well, Kieran? So
I prepared a recommendation that if you've agreed to let them keep the $1,500 just for an audit trail, because we've had this brought to us, I prepared a recommendation that the Pirongia Ward Committee confirm the allocation of $1,500 plus GST that was recorded in Resolution 8/21/27 to Pirongia School from its discretionary funds. So it's just saying that the money is still theirs to use. So we've just dotting an I's and crossing T's for when the auditors come through and they might want to follow where the money trail has ended up.
Okay, so with that then, we have that resolution that you've read out, and also the resolution that we received the report.
Yep, I can move that into one resolution so that the Pirongia Ward committee, A, receive the report, and then B, confirm the allocation.
Yeah, okay. So with that, yeah, like Janet and Jeff, are you happy to move and second that? Yeah. Okay, so I'll take those two as moving and seconding. So all in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Great. Excellent. Thank you. All right, so now we're on to the discretionary fund allocations, which you've all received and read thoroughly. Now, at the beginning of our meeting, just before we started, we did get a note that there were some queries from some of the members on some of the financial information, which is in the public excluded part of the agenda. So I'd like to deal with that first. And so I'm proposing that we have that recommendation to remove, to exclude the public while we just discuss those particular items relating to the public excluding information. And then we will come back into public and do our deliberations for the applications. Okay, so with that, on page 201 of our agenda, we have a resolution, which is that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceeding of this meeting, and the reasons for that is given there. Now, do I have to read it out or anything, Kieran, or is that enough for us to use to get a mover and a seconder?
Yeah, it's certainly there on the agenda. The agenda is publicly available. There is explanation on the agenda. We could be here forever while you read out the recommendation. So yeah. As long as the committee is happy that for the reasons for it going into public excluded, then yeah, we should be fine.
Okay, so I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, please, to do that. And I've got Janet as one and Jeff seconder. All in favour, please say aye.